Hello and welcome. This is going to be a general reading for the Orion star seeds for January 2023. Alright. We have the moon and we have Page of Swords. This one's the moon card. Seems like you've been drifting for a while. And I think this month you're finally gonna see the light. You've really been fending for yourself for a bit, haven't you? The Hanged Bunny. That's what came out on top. Temperance also came out. You've been smiling through the pain. Yeah, smiling through the pain a lot. You did some good training, though, and you passed your tests with flying colors. I almost get the feeling of like you didn't expect to pass these tests or something. So now you're just like, oh, well, now I'm here. Cool. And because you did so good, you got the world at your fingertips. It's gonna be a good January for you guys. Wowee. Well, would you look at that? That's great. Well, good job. Oh, Chariot under that. Just remember, what you went through is behind you. Okay? Okay, I'll check both. Okay, so we have 17, 22, 61, 1, and 61. So 1 is your fear. If you have drawn the sigil, the thing preventing you from clearly seeing the reality of the situation at hand is your own fear. By its very nature, to fear is to push something or someone away from you. This is why fear is the number one most isolating experience on the planet. The more fearful we are, the more alone we are. It is important that we come to recognize what all our fears are about in order to both understand our reaction and choose how to respond to our fear. Fear can be defined as a response to a perceived threat. When we perceive something to be a danger to us, meaning that we perceive the possibility of suffering harm or injury on a physical, mental, or emotional level, then of course we naturally want to get away from it. Usually we want either to push it away, which would be fighting it, or we want to run away from it. Even if we grow up in loving environments, we inherit fear and the belief that we are not able to deal with certain things. We adopt feelings of powerlessness and inadequacy. Without questioning them, we adopt the inevitable fear that comes as a result of it. Unfortunately, the primary ways that we cover up our fears are through avoidance and control. Interestingly, it doesn't matter whether the threat we are perceiving is really a threat to us or not. What matters is if we perceive it to be a threat. Unless we feel safe in a given situation or with a given person, we will naturally push that situation or that person away from us. People who spend their life avoiding the feeling of fear never really live. They wander through life in a routine and familiar way only to arrive at death safely. People who live their life in spite of fear don't listen to the important messages encoded in their fear. They ignore limits and warning signs and do not look after themselves. This ultimately leads to suffering and collapse. Our life depends on our capacity to lovingly take responsibility for our fear. Trying to conquer fear or get rid of fear is nothing more than trying to separate yourself from separation itself. Remember, the opposite of fear is love. Any love you can have towards anything diminishes your fear. But the ultimate answer to fear is to love the self within you that is afraid, and to love the self within you that you are most afraid of. It's by embracing fear itself that we dissolve fear. If you have drawn this sigil, the unacknowledged threat is not something you don't see about the situation itself or someone involved in it, it's your own tendency to sabotage a good thing because of fear. Right now, you are using the tool of worry and expecting the worst to prevent yourself from being blindsided. It is a way to try to control the situation, which is a way of avoiding your fear. Instead of avoiding your fear, you need to face it. Otherwise, your fear will continue to obscure your capacity to see the truth of the situation, which isn't a bad truth. "17 is blame. Blame. If you have drawn this sigil, you are blaming others and blaming circumstances instead of clearly seeing what you were thinking, saying, and doing to create the situation at hand. Looking at yourself honestly, do you have a reason or excuse about why something went wrong that absolves you from guilt, responsibility, or fault? It is understandable why you would choose this perspective or choose to only see someone else's fault in a situation. Seeing your own fault makes you feel terrible about yourself and desperate because it means you might have been able to do something different that would have potentially prevented the negative situation at hand. That is torture for most people to become aware of. But if you refuse to see your responsibility and even fault in the situation, you will not see what you could have done differently. This guarantees that you cannot make actual remedies to the situation. You are therefore likely to end up in exactly the same situation over and over until you see where you went wrong and what you need to do differently. It is important not to blame yourself. It is also important not to blame others. Instead, we must clearly see what was their responsibility and what was ours relative to the situation at hand. What we must not do is to use our awareness of what was theirs or even invent inaccurate stories about how they are to blame to avoid seeing what is our responsibility. If you have drawn this sigil, you need to take responsibility for your actions. Responsibility is the opportunity to act independently because you are the one who has the duty to deal with something autonomously. This makes you the one who is accountable. Responsibility is also acquired to achieve an aim. Not taking responsibility is like standing at the end of a bowling alley, hoping someone else will throw the bowling ball for you so that you don't have to be accountable for the result of doing so yourself. This is what we are doing when we are blaming others. We are putting ourselves in a position of powerlessness and telling ourselves we could or can do nothing about the situation we are in. Responsibility comes with a certain kind of pressure. Now is the time to really accept and take on this pressure for the sake of your own life and your own relationships. "22 is endurism. If you have drawn the sigil, right now you are enduring something that you should not be enduring. You are probably telling yourself that it is good enough. Think about these common sayings. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. No pain, no gain. It is what it is. These sayings all have one thing in common. They help you to release resistance to a situation where you feel helpless to get out of a painful circumstance. Releasing resistance is a good thing. So, where is the harm in these sayings? The harm is that they can serve as justifications for not actively making changes so as to move beyond a painful situation. They can serve to keep you stuck in pain. We know the danger of escapism. We know the pain of being around a fair-weathered friend. We feel the frustration of a spiritual bypassing. Many of us have a fairly good grasp of this concept, that running away from the pain and from things that scare us is not the way to create a fulfilling life. But we need to be aware that there is a danger at the other side of the spectrum as well. There is danger in becoming attached to pain, unwilling to leave it. This endurism is just as unhealthy as escapism. It is a coping strategy for dealing with the perception that you are helpless to have your needs met, but it is one that ensures that you will spend the rest of your life coping with a painful life instead of creating a life you enjoy. We believe there is a serious virtue in suffering. We stay in situations and perpetuate situations that are causing us pain so we can feel as though we are good and are doing what's right. In endurism, we are in fact escaping something. That something is the fear of making a change and the responsibility required to actually make that change. Our ego fears that by making the change that will enable us to progress and reach our joy, we will become a bad person and therefore lose connection with the people and things we want to be connected to. In relationships, we develop the idea that if someone loves us, they will endure any amount of pain to be with us. And in the opposite scenario, if we love someone, we will endure any amount of pain to be with them. In fact, over the course of our relationships, we may even begin to incrementally cause other people's pain to put them in painful situations with us. We are doing this subconsciously but deliberately to try to create the experience of someone loving us so much that they will endure anything to be with us. They may also be doing the same to us, and we are enduring it. Be aware that when you look at the endurism you are engaged in relative to life, you are going to become very defensive. You are going to find all kinds of reasons why it is good or right to perpetuate your painful situation. Your reasoning is preventing progress. You have plenty of incredibly valid reasons to justify your endurism. No one is trying to convince you that your reasons are not valid, but your valid reasons aren't good enough to justifying living a miserable life. In this situation, you are on a boat in the ocean. You don't like that boat. So you desire a different boat. So it comes. But you still won't get off your old boat. You have lots of reasons for not getting off your old boat, so the universe says. I'm going to have to make it easier for them to get off their old boat and onto the new one. So I'm going to poke holes in this old boat. But when that boat starts to spring leaks, instead of jumping on the new boat, you run around trying to patch up the holes on your old boat. Eventually, the only way you get onto the new boat is for the universe to quite literally sink your boat. So you end up in the water with a choice to drown or get on the new boat. If you have drawn this sigil, become acutely aware of the situations in your life you think you have to endure. Get really aware about the excuses you make to justify enduring those situations. Look for ways you actually do have a choice in the situations you feel stuck in. Look at things you could actually do to make a change. Take your power back. That explains the Morrigan. Wowee. Okay. 61. There we go. Temporality. If you have drawn this sigil, what is preventing your progression is that you are either too attached to the temporal in general or to an aspect of the temporal. This has caused you to lose sight of the bigger picture, which includes much more than the temporal world. You might be looking for a solution that does not exist in the temporal world. That is like looking for a lost key, but being convinced that the key is somewhere in one specific room and never finding it because the key you were looking for is not even in that room. The temporal world is a world of the purely physical. It is particles, body, color, shape, soma, physical health, the physical aspect of sex, money, houses, places, things, the physical aspect of food, plants, people, and pets, possessions, etc. It is the realm of the material. If you have drawn this sigil, you may be so invested in the physical and provable and rational, and even potentially the type of science that is purely focused on physicality and those same things, that you have forgotten that there is more to the universe than meets the eye. The physical world may seem secular, but it isn't. The physical world is not separate from spirit, it is a manifestation of spirit. You are denying the majority of the universe and actually the majority of yourself. If you have invested in this way, because of this, you might be more skeptical than you should be. By closing down your mind, you become unable to experience other potentials and other realities. You become selectively ignorant. Perhaps this sigil is calling you into open mindedness and even faith. To have faith is to have positive confidence or trust in something. It is to think something is true even without proof. The famous philosopher Bertrand Russell once said, "Where there is evidence, no one speaks of faith. We do not speak of faith that 2 and 2 are 4 or that the earth is round. We only speak of faith when we wish to substitute emotion for evidence." Unfortunately for Bertrand Russell, he is forgetting something. The first person who believed the earth was round enough to be motivated and set out to prove that it was round had to go on faith before there was proof to back up that belief. Many people believe that faith is the absence of doubt. This could not be further from the truth. We only think that faith is the absence of doubt when we confuse faith with knowing. The doubt is to have uncertainty about something. Faith cannot exist in a universe of certainty because certainty is knowing. Faith is not required when we know. And so, if doubt is uncertainty, doubt is a necessary condition of faith. If we take doubt a step further and let doubt mean what it means emotionally to most people, to doubt is to consider something unlikely, and this is to act as if you know something that you do not know. It is to bring a sense of certainty to a universe of uncertainty. For this reason, doubt is the flip side of faith. If you have drawn this sigil, you may also be suffering because of your attachment to some aspect of the temporal. Perhaps it is your social status, someone else's success, or state of being in the physical world relative to temporal matters, the way your body looks, your job, paying the bills, things you possess or want to possess, your house, your city, your culture, your physical health, the physical aspect of self, and so on. The sigil has come to tell you that the answer you seek does not lie in the physical, and that you are being limited by your fixation on some aspect of the physical. It is like being so focused on the tree that you forget the forest. The thoughts causing your over-identification with the aspect of the physical must be questioned. It is time to invest your focus on the higher perspective of truth that comes with the awareness that transcends physical life, space, and time, and all things in it. I can find peace in every breath. When I honor my feelings, I find my power in powerless situations. When I shine bright, I give others permission to shine with me. And when you find your power, you give others to find their power too. Hopefully that helped, and hopefully you have a wonderful January.